Hello, everyone, and welcome to the November edition of the Urban Design Panel. My name is David McElnay, and I'm representing the Executive Committee of the UDP, the Urban Design Panel, today in introducing our excellent panel presentation on the Interstate Bridge Replacement. First of all, though, the Urban Design Panel is sponsored jointly by the American Institute of Architects, the American Planning Association, and the American Society of Landscape Architects, and is composed of professionals from those three organizations with a shared interest in urban design. We're joined today by Kathy Wendland from AIA Oregon. The AIA Oregon has hosted this event for many years and continues to offer these monthly Zoom meetings. We have been making forays into in-person presentations, as was done in the past. If any of you joined our summer social with the AIA this summer of 2025, and we'll hope to do a little more of that in the coming year, maybe even something with City of Possibilities. We'll see what happens. Our panel presentations can be found on the AIA Oregon event calendar at their website, as well as the weekly Thursdays at 3 newsletter that the AIA puts out. You will have to contact Kathy in order to get on that mailer. UDP presentations are held every third Tuesday of the month. To request a registration or to suggest a future topic or pose questions, simply send an email to Kathy Wendland at AIA. She will put her email in the chat. This presentation will be about 30-40 minutes and followed by a Q&A session. For the Q&A, please pose your questions and comments in the Zoom chat box. Also, feel free to raise your hand virtually. We'll grab your question that way at the end of the presentation and call on you if we can. Our executive committee member, Jamie, is here today. Jeremy Shane, is here today to manage the Q&A. So at the end, he'll be posing the questions back to our presenters that you all put in the chat box. Any follow-up questions that you might have can be sent directly to today's presenters or through their representatives via the email address that's going to get dropped in the chat box. In this instance, there is a designated front person for that. So one of our hosts will put that contact information in the chat box. So these presentations are recorded and archived and can be found at the link provided in the chat if Kathy's able to archive that and get it up in the chat before this session is over. So today's presentation, as I said, is regarding the Interstate Bridge Replacement. The team today represents a broad array of project managers, design managers, from in-house within the different authorities involved, as well as consultants. And so without going any further, so we can get straight into the presentation, Casey Lyles, I'm going to turn it over to you and let your team go ahead and get going. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, David, for the nice introduction on that. My name is Casey Lyles, and I'm the delivery manager for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. We have about 25 slides, I think, that we'll go through. And as you mentioned, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. I will turn it over at some point to Shilpa to continue the presentation. And then we have Nolan Weinhardt and Tom Osborne with us from the program, and our architects are knowledgeable folks for that to help with our Q&A. So with that, let's get started. Good afternoon, and want to orient all to the Interstate Bridge program, the replacement program. So we are talking about the program that replaces the Interstate Bridge on I-5. It also includes improvements to 7 interchanges in 5 miles between Oregon and Washington, so in the north part of Portland and into Vancouver. The 7 interchanges include from the south end, Interstate and Victory Boulevard, all the way to the SR 500 39th Street interchange with I-5. Next slide, please. This is a multimodal program with building the light rail, transits, active transportation, and improvements for the interstate itself. Of course, this corridor is of regional and state and local significance, with the corridor being the major north-south on the west coast, supporting the regional national commerce. We are over 100 years old with the northbound bridge, and we have, of course, the jeopardy of seismic event, as well as other problems in the corridor, including the safety, congestion, and mobility for active transportation, transit users, and those on the interstate themselves. What we want to replace the interstate as part of our purpose and need for the program, replace the bridges. That's the Main River Bridge as well as Northport Harbor Bridge, so they can withstand earthquake and maintain that access and the economic connection between the states and again up and down the west coast. And the investment here is expected to nearly double the value in the cost of the program for the economic benefit in the region. You see on the note on the right, you see about 5,500 direct jobs, 10,900 direct jobs, indirect, for every $1 billion spent in the program. Next slide. As I mentioned, the different problems we're addressing within the program area for I-5 again, addressing safety with little or no shoulders in the program area. We have poor sight distance, no shoulders. We can't get crashes to be pushed to the side. So if you're in an accident on the bridge, you're stopping traffic, which causes problems, of course, for safety as well. Or with our bridge lift, we have up to a lift a day for either vehicles, maritime vehicles, or for even maintaining the bridge, which interrupts the traffic, bus and other vehicles, as well as the pedestrians on the bridge. Today we have 143,000 vehicles a day. Actually, it's 2019 volumes in the weekday volumes, with about 10 hours of congestion. As I mentioned, the earthquake vulnerability, the bridge is built in 1917, 1958, with present day seismic standards is not adequate for that. If you haven't been on the bridge before, we have inadequate bike and pedestrian paths. The sidewalks there are in a little bit less than 4 feet even, slightly in some areas. And also wayfinding is not super direct through the program area. And of course, if you are looking for public transportation today, we have some buses that go across the bridge, stuck in traffic as all the other vehicles go through congestion or get stopped or held up for incidents. Addressing all of these purpose and need items in the program area. Next slide, please. We've developed the program building on past work that was developed during the Columbia River Crossing project, which went through the environmental analysis, completed its NEPA analysis, and reached a record of decision. Through the startup of this program, with our program partners listed at the bottom, reached agreement with the federal government that the program would undertake the supplemental environmental impact statement and developed a modified locally preferred alternative that would meet the needs identified using those same purpose and need statements that were developed during the time of CRC, Columbia River Crossing. But we also got community outreach, did a technical analysis, and with our partners reached that consensus of the modified locally preferred alternative that would address those needs. So as the partners agreed, that would be extended. That MLPA, Modified Locally Preferred Alternative, would be studied through the Supplemental EIS process. And we have a schedule slide coming up, shows where we're at. But we have two partners for just for every part of the program, just on the Oregon and Washington side, but the cities, the ports, the transit agencies, and the planning agencies, as well as the two DOTs. Next slide. A snapshot for our program schedule. We, of course, we're in 2025, nearing the end of 25. We've been working in our environmental process, working towards completion of our final supplemental EIS, which we anticipate early next year. And we're trying to get to reach that with a record of decision in the early part of next year, I think spring or late spring. And if we can get to the record of decision, we can get to that construction phase, where we start up our real estate process, as well as continue our pre-construction activities, including permitting, securing any final funding sources for construction. And all the time we still have ongoing tribal consultation. We also have continued communication, community engagement throughout the program duration. And next slide, please. So what are we studying? As I said before, this modified locally preferred alternative is defined a couple things that on the left side here, we have a couple of columns here to indicate what's in the modified locally preferred alternative, what's that compared to in the environmental document, which is the no-build alternative. And then on the right side, you see some additional design options that were studied or are being studied in the environmental process. So the left side, again, the MLPA, including the active transportation improvements, both the facilities and connections that are involved along the corridor and across the corridor in the program area. We're extending light rail from the Expo current Max Yellow Line station up to Evergreen Boulevard, and also adding the inside shoulders that provide bus on shoulder through the program area. With the light rail, there's 3 new stations added, one at Hayden Island and 2 in downtown Vancouver. There, as I showed on the map, there are 7 interchanges, and we have modifications to those 7 interchanges in the program area. Those interchanges are spaced less than what was typically desired from design in an urban area. In a standard area, you want about 2 miles between project between interchanges, and in the urban area, down to about a mile is really try to keep within a mile, try to keep to at least a mile between interchanges, and we have between a half and 3/4 of a mile between interchanges, resulting in a lot of people jockeying for their between their origin and destinations. With the MLPA, we include 3 through lanes in each direction, and at least 1 auxiliary lane in each direction. So we've been studying 1 and 2 auxiliary lanes in each direction in the environmental document. Also included in the MLPA is a variable rate tolling that cross the river to be used as for financing as well as demand management. Of course, that, as I mentioned, was in our environmental document compares to the no build, in which all of the other investments in the region would be built, but just not this program. So that's the analysis that shows what the difference would be with those related impacts as a real result of the project. Additionally, we're studying these options. We have 3 different bridge configurations that we're studying. One is a movable span that's similar to the lift bridge that's there today. A single level bridge where all modes are at 1 level, and then a double deck or stacked bridge where we'd have the freeway on the top levels and the active transportation or light rail on the lower levels. That configuration is where the Columbia Brook Crossing project ended. Another option is with is to not rebuild the C Street ramps in Vancouver to and from I-5. And as I briefly mentioned, we are studying, not in addition to the one auxiliary lane, we're studying 2 auxiliary lanes, which is also the closing point of where Columbia River Crossing project was. In Vancouver, with the park and rides for accessing the light rail stations, we have locations at Waterfront or Evergreen stations, and the different locations identified. And in Vancouver also, we're studying a range of shift in alignment between what we call the centered alignment around the existing I-5, or an alignment that shifts improvements slightly to the west. That's in Vancouver between SR14 and Mill Plain interchange. So just in that small area there. And of course, our analysis is for the year 2045 in the environmental impact statement. Next slide, please. This is just a different look at the map, again, from the program area. It does go off the screen just a little bit with Victory Boulevard interchange at the south end. But part of it, oops, I guess maybe it's not off the screen, just a little hidden on mine. But reflects the light or orangish line and the stations for light rail transit. Again, starting at, is that someone speaking? Okay. For the 4 stations shown, with the existing expo station, as well as the 3 new stations, reflecting the active transportation across the river and through the program area, and then also calling out the bus on shoulder for the inside shoulders. Additionally, to note, I think just the kind of the magnitude of improvements within here. I think one thing I didn't mention was the replacement of the bridges are downstream from the existing bridges, and it also, the program does include removing the existing I-5 bridges across the main stem of the Columbia there. And with that, let's go on to the next slide, please. I mentioned the study of different bridge configurations. We wanted to share the different graphics for reflecting our work with the U.S. Coast Guard, and in our study of NEPA, studying a movable span and working with them to identify if there are affected river users. The graphics reflect the fixed bridge on the left and the movable span on the right. The left side has a proposed clearance of 116 feet for vehicles, for river vessels, and the proposed lift on the right would be at or at least the same level as today's lift, 178 feet of clearance. That again is to address the potential reason, well, address the reasonable needs for navigation. We have to try to ultimately get to a U.S. Coast Guard permit for replacing the bridge. The NEPA analysis includes both fixed and movable spans. And recently we did submit a revised or updated navigation impact report to the Coast Guard. After they do their review, there's a 30-day comment period for the Coast Guard, and we hope to get a configuration decision from the U.S. Coast Guard in early 2026. Next slide, please. With that, we do have a short video of just a fly through of the corridor. And while Fabian's bringing that up, the video is prepared to just hover above the freeway, start at the south end of the program, move entirely through the program area, and I'll narrate just a little bit as we walk through. But this is reflecting, I think, a single level bridge fixed with a steel girder bridge, and also one auxiliary lane, I believe, is in this. We do have others available on our website that shows the various configurations. Thought we just show one today as we walk through. Again, starting at the south end, we start above the Victory Boulevard interchange. You'll see some at the Marine Drive interchange coming up. That includes the partial interchange access that goes to and from Hayden Island to the south. On the east side or the right side of the screen, you'll see an arterial bridge connecting Hayden Island to the local North Portland there, also acting as the south half of the interchange. We see on the left side coming up on Hayden Island an orange box that reflects the light rail transit station, and then ramps to and from to the north for Hayden Island. As we cross the river, you'll see on the right side, you see the active transportation on the outside, light rail on the outside of the southbound bridge on the left side. Again, this reflects the 3 auxiliary lanes and that's three through lanes and 1 auxiliary lane. Yeah, that was a flip. And then, of course, coming across the SR14 interchange versus today, this is an elevated interchange above Burlington Northern Santa Fe, BNSF. Coming into town, touching back down to grade before we get to kind of the Evergreen Boulevard area, light rail station terminus on the left side there, approaching Mill Plain interchange here with some improvements and some continued improvements, making sure that we had address the congestion and safety operations through the corridor, as well as the active transportation. And finally, the last 2 interchanges, we have Fourth Lane interchange and some improvements leading up to the SR500 interchange. On the south side, you'll see actually a braided ramp system. So throughout the corridor, we have several tools that we address different operations and safety. Could be both the auxiliary lanes, collector distributors, and braided ramps through that. As well as we will continue to have intelligent transportation systems, including active traffic management through ramp metering, driver informations with variable message signs, et cetera. Those are investments moving forward. And I think I might transition to Shilpa at this point, if I remember right.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. Thanks, Casey, for the introduction, and David for the introduction. So as Casey mentioned, we're still in the NEPA phase, and we're trying to get to a record of decision that will allow us to move into the design and construction phases. So we are trying, we have another slide that shows funding. We did get grants from Federal Highway and USDOT, as well as we have commitment from both states. So we're trying to get ready for the next part after all is design and construction. So one of the things that we wanted to have prepared for the program as a whole is how do you want to approach architectural elements throughout the corridor? We will not be able to construct all 5 miles at once. We'll be constructing them in multiple projects. Right now, we're looking at 28 construction contracts, but we wanted to have this conversation so we have a uniform idea approach to the entire corridor. To that extent, our teams did we have Tom here. He and Ariana. We have a bridge architects team. We also have like Nolan and team on urban design. We did work on this, and we had 2 workshops. We hosted 2 series of meetings and workshops in July and August of this summer. And we worked with the tribes as well as the Section 106 consulting parties. We have these meetings with the program partners and as well as the advisory groups, our community advisory group and equity advisory group. And they were recorded and they were streamed live, so they're also available for the public. We do have links to them in our website. David, I believe we provided that the registration link too. So we have limited time today, so I'm going to go really quick through some of the information that we shared in those meetings, but highly recommend watching those videos. They're much longer meetings and go into a lot more detail than what we see here today. So So the goal of the meetings and the workshops were to share the current conceptual work that we've done so far in the NEPA phase, and then solicit feedback to inform the guidelines that we'll have to set for design and construction procurement documents. So the idea is to get this feedback and develop a document that will go as part of the procurement documents, whether we're procuring for design or construction for all the contracts. In the previous slides, one of the previous slides, Casey mentioned about bridge configuration and that being one of the decisions that needs to be made in NEPA. So what the meetings and workshops were not, and we were really clear about it, is we are not trying to select a bridge type or bridge configuration through these workshops. We still have those the work that we need to do through NEPA in order to identify bridge configuration, and the bridge type will follow after we understand what the bridge configuration is. And of course, like as Casey mentioned earlier too, as with the rest of the program, we try to use the CRC information. CRC did this process, they went through this process, and CRC was very close to construction on the bridge itself. So we have a document from CRC that documented all the architectural guidance process. So we use that as a starting point, but built on that based on the conditions that we have today. Next slide, please. So a few caveats we provided before we went into the details of it is we had to make some kind of assumption going into these drawings, even though we were still have to go through NEPA. So most examples, all examples they presented, they showed a single level fixed span bridge. Even though we have a double level and lift span, we mostly, the examples were around the single level fixed span. And the message that these guidelines would apply to the program regardless of whether the bridge type, or we mentioned the bridge over here, but also the other areas we have walls, we have abutments, we have other elements. So these guidance was meant to apply throughout the program area. And again, the longer videos on our website, they show the next elements in detail, but we had topics that included the main river crossing itself, the shared use pathways and the connectivity to active transportation, and the rest of the bridges. We have the main river crossing bridge, but as you saw in the video, we also have the North Portland Harbor Bridge, and we have at least, I think, now the 50 bridges that are not the main river crossing in our program. So we talked a little bit of how we want to see architecture and those elements. Again, walls in the program area, noise walls, we'll have some noise walls, abutments, etc. And we also talked a little bit about the landscape design and ecology throughout the program area. So with that, next slide, please. So with this one, briefly, we adopted a people-first approach. We have a multimodal project. We have light rail transit. We don't see the express buses over here, but we also have express bus as part of the program. Of course, we have motor vehicles and trucks on the roadway, and we have active transportation, people walking and biking. So we looked at it not just from the vehicle standpoint, but also how we approach it from people who are walking, biking, or are in the neighborhood, because all of these elements do touch the neighborhoods that exist on the Vancouver as well as Portland side. Next slide, please. It's also a three-part approach. As I mentioned, we had the CRC documents, all the work that was done in CRC, as well as a year or two ago, we also presented some urban design presentations in our CAG and EAG Community Advisory Group and Equity Advisory Group. So we were able to solicit a lot of feedback on the principles and goals that we think we want to see on the program. So we built on that information that we heard from the community. And then right now is how do we do that is again, it's a high level formulation on how to address the needs of the principles and goals. What should the architectural characteristic be for the program? And the third step is what, as I mentioned, this information is going to be incorporated into procurement documents. So then we can see the design response when we go into design as well as construction into a tangible form of the elements. Next slide, please. So we also developed an example renderings of what we would like to see from an architectural standpoint. Again, these are not the final design or any design of the bridge, but if we were to apply these architectural elements like continuity of the shared use path, wayfinding, etc., like what would we like to see would be desirable from a bridge or a shared use path standpoint. So we'll see a series of pictures here coming up. They go from the south to north, just like the video did. So this is a picture of an example, like standing on Hayden Island on the east side of the new bridge. This almost puts us like at or under the existing bridge, because here in this diagram where the existing bridge is removed. So you can see north towards Vancouver. Next slide, please. Here is an example of how we would like to see some elements. This is an example on Hayden Island again. It's one of the east-west streets going under I-5. So that's an overpass, I-5 overpass, and how we can try to keep it open, how we want to like look at some treatments for lighting, etc. And this is an example. We have 3 east-west streets going on Hayden Island, and we have other roadways also going under I-5. So this is an example, again, example situation. Next slide, please. Moving north, we also have some renderings for the main river crossing itself. This is one of the renderings we have. We also have some other pictures on our website if you're interested in seeing them. But this is one example of the renderings that we have. Again, single level fixed span. Next slide, please. Moving on to Vancouver. Vancouver is also, if you notice in the video, and Casey mentioned, it's an elevated interchange. We have to, today I-5 goes underneath the BNSF railroad. In the future, irrespective of whether it's a mobile span or fixed span, the I-5 has to go above BNSF railroad. So that puts that also like increases the distance from the bridge, the new bridge, for the active transportation to get from the new bridge to the waterfront. We also have a transit station right there at the waterfront, and you can see the transit guideway here, as well as the active transportation coming down from the bridge to existing ground. So you have quite a few structures here between the roadway, I-5, active transportation structures, as well as light rail structures. So how do we maintain the connectivity? So for people who are trying to maybe move from active transportation to transit or vice versa, how do you make it easy for wayfinding, as well as how can we like program the space that we have here? Next slide, please. Another picture or another rendering, a picture rendering on the Vancouver side. We are on the east side of the bridge looking west, and that you can see that green pathway. Again, we did not select the green color. It's just an example of like how we can probably use like forms and colors in the future to provide that continuity of like to see like where the active transportation is going. In this example, we're showing this going under I-5 and connecting on the other side with the light rail transit. You can't quite see it on the other side, but an idea of like how do we connect active transportation to light rail transit. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is again on the Vancouver too. We had a few more examples on the Vancouver side, just as I mentioned, because of the complexity of the different elements coming in, the proximity, again, Port of Vancouver on the other side, and being right there in the city center, looking at like how it would look on along the roadways in downtown. So we had a few more renderings shown on the Vancouver side. Next slide, please. I think that concludes some of the examples that we have. Again, highly recommend watching the videos. Tom, Ariana, and our urban design team, Morgan, Sam, they did a great job. So you have a lot more visuals and visualizations and pictures in that video, and storytelling too. I mentioned funding earlier. I just want to give a quick update on quick picture on what our funding scenario is. So our last cost estimate was completed in 2022, and we had a financial plan at that time. We are actively working on updating a cost estimate right now, and hope to have something late this year or early next year. But the slide we see here shows our current proposed funding sources. We have the existing state funding of $100 million, and connecting Washington funding. Mill Plain Interchange that we saw on the video has its own separate funding of $117 million. And then both states, Oregon and Washington, have committed to $1 billion each. We were lucky to get the Federal Bridge Investment Program grant, the BIP grant, that's about $1.5 billion, as well as the US DOT Mega Grant, which is $600 million. And then we were also successful with the City of Vancouver in getting the Reconnecting Communities pilot grant for the community connector on the Vancouver side for $30 million. We also have the toll funding that is committed, but you can see we have the legislative authorization that has been secured by both states. And then we are also going after the FTA New Start CIG funding for about $1 billion to help with the transit elements of the program. So that is the proposed funding sources that we have so far on the program. Next slide, please. Real quick update on another update on the program. As I mentioned earlier, we're trying to get ready for construction, for design, final design and construction as soon as we get a record of decision next year. And this, what you see on screen, is part of our planning on how we think we want to approach construction. Again, you can see some of the construction contracts. The plan is to start with the Columbia River Bridge being the first contract, and then start building once we have the bridge and the approaches to the bridge, like finish up light rail extension, get light rail operating, and then continue on with the rest of the construction contracts beyond on the north and south side of the river. We recently did an industry event. We did an online webinar. Last year, we did an in-person event showing this information to the industry and what we think our approach is to construction. We did an update this year, early September. Early September, and that was a webinar. But all the information, again, the presentation as well as the materials have been posted online. So if anybody's interested in the opportunities. This September, we provided a little more detail on the initial contracts we think will go first, like the bridge, the approaches, SR14 package A, as well as pre-completion tolling, and try to list some of the construction opportunities that will be associated, or construction elements that will be associated with each of these contracts, so people have an idea on what opportunities are there. Next slide, please. So this is the upcoming work. As I mentioned earlier, we are actively working on the cost estimate and financial plan update for an update in late 2025, early 2026. We also continue to actively work on the final SEIS. Casey mentioned the draft SEIS. We did get really good feedback from the community, 9,000 plus comments that we're addressing right now, and working with the federal partners to get to the final supplemental EIS next year. That will be followed by an amended record of decision. And that is basically, that's when we'll be able to get into construction and final design. Quick note on tolling, that's also ongoing work. They set up a bi-state tolling subcommittee to work on setting the tolling rates and policies on tolling, and they continue to meet and discuss these policies and rates. So IBR does not set the rates for tolling. It's set by by OTC and WSTC. These meetings are also streamed live, and there's an opportunity for public comment, and the dates and times for these meetings are also on our website. You can go to a calendar, you can see all the meetings that are related to the IBR program over there, and you're able to access those meetings from there. And once we get the record of decision, we will continue the work to advance engineering, so we can go into construction as soon as possible, towards the next steps of the program. I believe that might be it. And yeah, this is the slide we mentioned earlier about the contact. We have if you have questions, comments, again, after this meeting, please send us an email at info@interstatebridge.org, Fabian, and we have a team monitoring that continuously. So we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Yeah, I feel like I'm going from like bottom to the top, but again, check out a calendar for events, for meetings, and there'll be links associated with them to be able to attend those meetings. We have the newsletter where we try to keep everybody updated on what's happening on the program. But we also have office hours. So if there's any particular question that you have on any topic, you're able to see those time slots that are available online, and you can sign up for them. And if you let us know what topics you're looking for, if you have particular questions, our team works to make sure that the respective subject matter expert is available to have that conversation. You can either pick a virtual option or in-person option in the office, and we are able to coordinate that. And I think that was the last slide. We can maybe just like, yeah, you can either leave it on the previous slide or this slide while we're answering questions. Anything else, Casey?
Nope, that's it. We can get to Q&A.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Casey and Shilpa. That's very informative. It's great to catch up and see where things are and kind of get a look ahead here. Sounds like there's tons more information on the website for those that want to dig into it. But we do have a couple questions based on your presentation today. The first one here is from Kirk. Is the movable/lift span being explored due to requirements or requests by the U.S. Coast Guard? Is it primarily responsible from the U.S. Coast Guard's perspective? And if yes, are there other constituents, agencies, or other sort of reasons within Oregon or Washington that support the lift bridge?
Yeah, I'll start with that. So yes, the answer is for the movable span is working with the U.S. Coast Guard, again, to address that, as I mentioned before, the reasonable needs of navigation. We have indicated there were river users that spoke up and said they were impacted with the 116-foot clearance. So, and we have heard, we haven't heard advocacy for a movable span. However, we have heard advocacy through all of our partners and the community for a fixed bridge. So that's kind of where we sit today in the movable span. It's still in NEPA process, and we expect to hear back again early next year from the Coast Guard.
Great, thank you. It seems like with a lift span, you're able to lower the overall elevation a bit more of the fixed bridge, but that's kind of the push, that's the playback, right? Yeah, the kind of push and pull, if you will. There are a lot of elevated structures on this, and David's asking, what are the sort of like key TOD or urban design challenges of all of the sort of spaces those lifted elevation transportation structures make? What are the key? I guess what are the highest and most specific ones that we could talk about here?
This is where I might invite. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So yeah, I was gonna just like get started like saying there. So that is something that we are working with the cities to understand. I think the elevated transit that we like mostly have that you see is like we saw some of those renderings on the Vancouver side, especially where it's all like elevated compared to CRC. Also, when CRC after the waterfront, it came back like down to existing ground and went through the city of Vancouver. That has changed between CRC and IBR, and that was in response to the community feedback we had from CRC, as well as when IBR was started, is as an attempt to minimize impacts to downtown businesses and residences there. So right now, yeah, all the guideway on the Vancouver side is elevated, but along the I-5 corridor. So it's minimizing impacts to the neighborhoods. So there is that area with the BNSF Railroad, with Bridge Landing, with active transportation trying to connect back down into Washington, that there is more work to be done. Again, we are still in the preliminary phases, work to be done. There are discussions to be had with the cities as well as TriMet and CTRAN, our partners. Again, there's also how we do that and how we approach that, and the limitations that we have from DOTs doing that work versus doing that work with the partners. We don't usually do TOD work, but it's more than the DOTs in this program. So there's definitely a lot of conversations that we need to have as to how we can use those spaces. I think Casey, you were going to call in, I don't know.
I was
Tom.
then invite Nolan and Tom if they want to add anything to elevation on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that in the CRC, as Shupal mentioned, it was surface running light rail. So you step off the train and, all the development around you is transit oriented development, and the distance you can walk is all passing transit oriented land uses effectively. And so I think we have two challenges with this new alignment. One, you're probably going to spend a few minutes just getting off of that Vancouver station down to the ground and then to adjacent development. And then the second is that a significant portion of your walk shed with the terminus station is freeway rather than urban space. So it will have a little bit lower transit-oriented development opportunity. But as Shilpa said, it's in response to some constraints that didn't exist during the CRC days.
Great. Tom, were you going to add something or?
No one covered that well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Awesome. So I think, along with the impacts of sort of the connectivity as you're describing, there's also, April has a question, how is the overall design of the program taking into account impact to neighborhoods that might be impacted along the corridor, whether it's, the footprint of it or the sort of the visual and impacts of the structure itself, in particular, low income and marginalized communities like through a fourth plane corridor.
Yeah, I'll start on that. So a couple things in that, especially when you think about some of the communities, going back to, I think when there was comment previously about what kind of connectivity are we making for those that maybe walk, bike, or roll, and do we have that? Is I-5 a barrier today for folks that travel in and around the corridor, getting across the corridor? Even as what some might think is, just a bridge across the interstate may not have the best current active transportation on it. And where we are replacing the bridges are identified, say, in between fourth plane and SR 500, for instance, we replace the 29th and 33rd Street overpasses and ensure that there's the space on those bridges for all users, and focusing that we want the corridor to be attractive for the active transportation users just as much. Other areas within the program, similarly, it's not just the bridges over, but the corridors as they connect in and around underneath the freeway, as well as the wayfinding through the corridor to make it more attractive for those that may have the ability, but also make it easier and more efficient for those that need that mode. And the other part of that is all of the connectivity, not just the active transportation, but having the consideration of how modes connect with each other, including the hub and downtown of local buses, express buses, active transportation hitting the same area to be able to switch modes between And then the last part is, ensuring throughout the program design that we're still looking to avoid and minimize those impacts as we continue towards construction. Want to add anything else?
You covered, Casey.
Well, I think you're starting to lead into the question that David had in terms of not just what the impacts it might have, but how does this project look to the top three community connectors that didn't exist before? How is it actually providing stitching back to, like you're saying, back to transportation or cross connectivity? Are there top three versions of that?
I could give mine. We might have different answers, but I suspect not. The connection of Tomahawk Island Drive on Hayden Island is a connection that doesn't exist, and frankly, you could say all three of the new streets on Tomahawk Island Drive are going to be dramatically better for someone in a mobility device, on a pedestrian or a cyclist. But let's just count that as one for now. Second is the Main Street connection. Right now, none of Vancouver's main streets except Washington make their way to the Columbia River, and so now Main Street, which is getting a lot of attention for the retail and urban design experience, that'll connect all the way down to the river. And then the third is the connection actually across the river, which does exist today, but it doesn't exist in a way that most of us would want to enjoy. So you'll be able to make that connection on foot or bike in a way that today is pretty gnarly. Those are my top three.
Everyone agree?
Yeah,
Really important ones.
Yeah, Nolan mentioned a few, but that has been something that we're also like thinking about. Even we have some in Vancouver also looking at the community connector in Vancouver area, and also we have two other overpasses, 29th Street and 33rd Street. So as we have these opportunities for east-west connections, is the team looking at it and seeing how can we better connect them? Is this what connections exist today? How can we, is there sufficient active transportation connections, and what are the communities that exist on both sides that we're able to better connect? So we have conceptual ideas right now, and I'm sure as we get more into design, we'll have more details on that too.
Great. I think there's a question here, maybe that lends itself to sort of bridge design. I think a characteristic, basically the question says the project seems to lack sort of inspiration, and especially one of this cost. As complex as it is, I think the illustrations of the bridge were showing there's two options, and they're demonstrating the lift and sort of the fixed bridge. But I think there's an interest in talking about the bridge structure as a piece of architecture and kind of where that is, and if there's more still design to come, or is the simplicity of the bridge driven by the budget and kind of the purpose itself of it.
I could probably bridge architect in the room. I could probably have a go at taking this one. I think, yeah, I think it's important to frame where we're at within the design process. So we're at the 30% stage of design, and it is a very complicated scheme. And so whilst it's difficult for the designer and me to hold off, what we're actually doing here isn't really designing the bridge. I think we're designing the envelope within which the bridge design is permitted to exist. And that envelope has to keep possible all of the types and configurations and all of the variables that are still variable because of the point of the process that we're in. What we are trying to do, and I think we go into a bit more detail explaining it in those meetings, which you can view via that link that's been shared, is to design the sort of the bounds within which we think good design exists, the kind of minimum architectural requirements that exist above the minimum structural requirements, and to design that threshold which the contractors design not be allowed to fall below without precluding their freedom to design within that envelope. And on the bridge, as Todd rightly points out, is as big and complicated as this. For us, it's less about one particular sort of architectural idea, and more about a series of elements that make sure people feel safe and welcomed and sort of designed for, which can apply to a variety of different bridge types. Some of them are radically different to one another architecturally, include particularly, movable spans, which introduce new towers in the river. So I think there are more concept designs that have been done, but the renders you see are really to just define that envelope, and we are hoping to continue that design in the remaining 70% work to sort of fulfill the architectural ambition as well.
So it seems more to come is a short way to say that, but yeah, this is the 30%, the framework of which you can work within, and setting the stage and establishing some costs is paramount. And the architecture, we hope the architecture has some ways to proceed and provide further aesthetics and interest along the way, right? I know the bridge types tend to drive that, given the form and function that come about. Let's see. It seems like unless there's any other questions, I think we've got them all listed here. David's raising his hand. Hi, how you doing?
Hey, I'm the chatty one today. So just in a simplistic way for us to understand the audience today, you gave us that breakout of the budgets, and the ones with a B behind them are like DOT and federal, state budget numbers. Realistically, like how much of those budget numbers are actually sort of allowed to be put towards transit-oriented design, a type of quality of environment, architectural, landscape, otherwise the design elements that a final visual quality of the community that this thing is going through. Can you give us some basic numbers on what can go to what?
Yeah. So you mentioned a few different elements in there, and David. So each of the grant does come with requirements on where it can be applied. We can I don't have like all of the list of that. The bridge is mainly for the bridge elements, any bridge elements. So we're planning on using that for the main bridge itself. But like I know we didn't get into like some of those details that Tom and Ariana presented in the longer presentations, but that's like very much like part of the bridge, like how we're approaching the design of the piers and the water itself. So I don't know if you'd like separate out and say this is
I guess
yeah.
sure. I appreciate that, and respectfully, I don't want to put you on that kind of a spot. The numbers that we actually looked at, for example, like $1 billion from Oregon, $1 billion from Washington, $4 billion from.
I think we lost David.
I suppose from the architectural perspective, it's I don't think it's the right way to design a bridge is to sort of have an architectural pot of money that could be applied to the bridge. I think a bridge of this scale really has to use its structure to be its architecture. We are trying to shape that structure positively, recognizing the scale that it is, so that really the architectural moves are the same as the structural moves. What tends to happen is if you have sort of a decoration pot of money, is that's the first thing to go, and then you end up with an ugly structure at the end of it. And so I think it's through the refinement and the shaping of the actual structure itself, we are trying to sort of deliver the architecture of the scheme.
And basically that map that you showed with all of the sort of construction projects, those funds are going directly to those improvements, ancillary funds and supportive projects, and maybe, projects that come about. I can imagine Hayden Island and some of the east-west banks with enhanced connections. There's opportunity for development to build upon that, which is independent, of course, of the bridge budget itself. Those are possible projects that may come about from the improvements, but the hope is they're planting and enabling future work and future development to occur in those landing places.
Yep.
Looks like we're getting towards the end of our time. I just have one question. Is there sort of built into this, is there still a level of anticipated art and sort of cultural budget associated with this? Is there anticipated sort of, will the project benefit from funds driven towards inspirational things that may be different than the bridge itself?
Go ahead, Tom, I see you.
I mean, so one area where we're hoping that the bridge or the approaches can offer the opportunity to sort of tell stories and connect to the history or culture of the place is very much along the waterfront, where you're going to be below the structure. That probably is an area where those elements aren't structural; they're not holding the bridge up. But what we're trying to provide is a sort of canvas so that you feel safe and welcome when close to or underneath the bridge, so that the sort of good work that's already happening along the waterfront in Vancouver can continue and sort of flow underneath the bridge. So as to the funding, I can't speak to that, but we're trying to provide the opportunity for that to exist.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Casey, Shilpa, Tom, Nolan. Appreciate all the time you're taking to help guide us through this journey and catch us up to speed. It looks like for more information, you have the website up there, or the email to reach out to for more information about the project. Kathy's posted the December UDP in the chat too, if you want to keep it for everyone who wants to understand what's happening in the future. But it's time for us to depart, and it's been a great opportunity to hear from y'all. I appreciate it. I know
Thanks
David,
for the time.
Yep.
Yeah,
Looks like
thank
David's
you.
on with his phone, but we're closing down, making sure everyone gets to their 1 o'clock. So I know it's important. So time's precious.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, everyone, for presenting today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Take
See you all in December.